Today, we're diving into something that's literally the foundational bedrock of our society, the critical rules of public finance. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but stick with me, because this isn't just dry compliance we're talking about here. We're looking at the very framework that protects all of us. Because when you're dealing with public money, an ethical failure doesn't just hurt a single organization, it impacts entire communities. I'm honestly so thrilled to guide you through this as we unpack the CIPFA Code of Ethics and figure out what it actually means for professional conduct. Because here's the thing, let's set the high stakes right away. When ethics are compromised in this field, it's the taxpayer who ends up footing the bill. We're talking about our schools, our hospitals, our infrastructure. They all rely completely on the integrity of the people managing those funds. And that brings us to the core question we're going to answer today. How exactly should public finance professionals respond when their strict professional ethics and really intense workplace pressures just collide head-on? To truly understand the gravity of this, I want you to listen to this undeniable professional truth. Let these words sink in, because this is essentially the ultimate thesis for our explainer today. Ethical conduct in public finance is essential to safeguard taxpayer money, ensure transparency and accountability, maintain public confidence, and protect the integrity of government institutions. Failures in ethics can lead to misuse of public resources, weakened public services, and loss of citizens' trust, making strong professional ethics vital for accountants, auditors, and finance professionals working in the public sector. Wow, that really sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it? Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The 5 fundamental principles. 2. Public trust versus private gain. 3. A real-world ethical dilemma. And 4. The 5-step ethical check. These learning objectives you see here are really designed to give you a comprehensive grasp of exactly how public finance professionals navigate these incredibly complex moral landscapes. We're going to look at how these standards differ from the private sector and how to actually apply practical checks in your daily work. Because in the realm of public finance, grasping these concepts isn't just optional. It's definitely not just a nice-to-have skill. It is a strict, absolutely non-negotiable public duty. All right, let's get into it. Section 1, the 5 fundamental principles. So the CIPFA Code of Ethics is uniquely designed just for this space. It specifically safeguards public money, and it applies directly to the accountants, the auditors, and the finance managers who literally hold the purse strings. It leans heavily on citizen accountability and transparency. And why does this matter so much? Well, to put it into perspective, local governments handle billions annually. So a mere 1% ethical slip-up, that doesn't just dip a stock price somewhere. It costs communities millions in wasted taxpayer money, it damages vital public services, and it destroys the confidence of citizens for years to come. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these 5 non-negotiable pillars actually form the foundation of professional conduct. Literally, every single decision made in public finance rests upon these specific concepts. It's kind of like a building. If even one of these pillars crumbles, the entire structure of public accountability is put at massive, massive risk. Let's quickly run through what each of these demands from a professional. Number 1, integrity. This demands just straightforward honesty in all professional relationships. Number 2, objectivity. That means strictly avoiding bias, conflicts of interest, or undue influence. No exceptions. Number 3, professional competence and due care, which is all about maintaining the knowledge and skill required to actually do the job effectively. Number 4 is confidentiality, meaning fiercely protecting sensitive information. And finally, number 5, professional behavior. This demands strict legal compliance and avoiding any action whatsoever that discredits the profession. Moving right along to Section 2, public trust versus private gain. The contrast here is literally night and day. In the private sector, the primary focus is typically on generating returns for shareholders, driving profitability, and maximizing corporate financial growth, right? But the public sector, governed by these CIPFA standards, is an entirely different beast. The primary duty is to the citizens and to safeguarding public money. Every single action has to withstand intense public scrutiny and demonstrate genuine value for taxpayers. In public finance, you have to prioritize citizens above all else. Even the mere appearance of private gain can just shatter public trust completely. And this brilliantly illustrates how it all builds sequentially. Look at the green base there. You have personal integrity and competence. That's your individual moral compass and your skills. Now that base supports the middle layer, professional conduct and objectivity. And only when those two are solidly in place can you reach that golden pin at the top, public trust and accountability. It all builds upward, reinforcing that every single decision must prioritize the public interest above absolutely everything else. Okay, let's get into the heavy stuff. Section 3. A real-world ethical dilemma.
Theory is fantastic on paper, but how does this hold up when the heat is actually on? I want to break the fourth wall here for a second and challenge you directly. Imagine you're sitting at your desk. A senior politician, someone with immense power over your career, pressures you to approve a contract with a company owned by his associate. But you know for an absolute fact that another bidder offers significantly better value for the taxpayer's money. Pause and reflect on this. What would you do? How would you react? Especially if looking that politician in the eye and refusing the pressure directly risked your job or your next big promotion. It is an incredibly heavy burden, isn't it?
Well, thankfully, there's a framework for that. Section 4, the 5-step ethical check. Think of this as your ethical emergency toolkit. It's the antidote designed to combat intense ethical pressure. When you are cornered by a powerful figure demanding a favor with public funds, you don't have to rely on panic or just your gut instinct. You simply weigh the situation on the scales of the 5-step ethical check. So the crucial point is systematically asking yourself these 5 questions. 1, is it legal? 2, is it transparent? 3, is it fair and objective? 4, would I be comfortable seeing this decision exposed on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper? And 5, does it protect public trust? If a politician is pushing an associate's overpriced contract, well, it fails objectivity, it completely fails the front page test, and it certainly fails public trust. So the final verdict is crystal clear. You must refuse to pressure, create a clear audit trail documenting the request, and escalate the issue to the appropriate authority right away. As we wrap up this complex topic, let's quickly review our key takeaways. The 5 CIPFA principles are entirely centered on public interest and trust. Objectivity and integrity, simply non-negotiable. Public money demands the highest ethical standards, always prioritizing transparency and due care. Take a second to reflect. Based on what we've covered today, how do you see public sector ethics differing from the private sector in your own personal or professional experience? I really want to leave you with this incredibly powerful closing thought. Public trust is built slowly and lost instantly. It takes years and years of consistent, transparent, and fair decision-making to build citizen confidence, but it only takes one compromised contract, literally just one ethical failure, to completely wipe it out. It highlights the ultimate fragility of citizen confidence and the massive responsibility of those who guard it. Thank you so much for your focused attention today. Grasping these ethical frameworks is deeply, deeply vital work.
Learning reinforcement.
In the private sector, financial ethics are tethered to a singular directive, maximizing profitability and generating shareholder value. The public sector operates under a different mandate. Here, the primary stakeholder is not a board of directors or a private investor group. It is the generalized citizen. This mandate alters the core operational reality. Because the ultimate asset being managed is taxpayer money, the acceptable risk profile shifts. You are no longer risking private capital for private gain. You are managing the collective wealth of a community. In this context, fiduciary duty becomes a requirement to support civic infrastructure. The objective is utility and public benefit, rather than financial return. This shift redefines what failure looks like. Wasting funds in public finance does not result in a lower quarterly dividend. It directly damages community services, like schools, transit, and healthcare networks. The system is sensitive enough that even the appearance of private gain represents a breakdown of the financial architecture. A single ethically compromised decision has the power to destroy citizen confidence, creating a deficit of trust that can take decades to rebuild. How do financial professionals translate an abstract concept like public trust into a concrete executable protocol? They rely on the CIPFA Code of Ethics. Managing public money requires a specialized decision-making architecture that prioritizes transparency over private sector commercial pressures. To understand how the CIPFA framework operates, we must examine its foundational layer. It is built on 5 distinct operational principles. The first principle is integrity. This is the requirement for straightforward and honest action across all professional relationships. The second principle is objectivity. This mandates the neutralization of bias and the avoidance of any conflicts of interest. Third is professional competence and due care. Competence is not a static state. It demands the continuous maintenance and upgrading of specialized financial knowledge to meet evolving standards. Fourth is confidentiality. This is the mandate to protect restricted public and operational data from unauthorized exposure.
The fifth and final principle is professional behavior. This demands strict statutory compliance and the proactive avoidance of any actions that could discredit the public finance profession itself. These 5 principles do not operate in isolation. They are interlocked elements of a larger mechanism. The failure or compromise of any single pillar creates a cascading failure across the entire financial oversight framework. Together, these axioms form the baseline that must be secured before any public finance decision can be legally executed. Once established, these 5 principles physically assemble into a hierarchical triage structure known as the Public Finance Ethics Pyramid. The base layer of this pyramid represents personal integrity and competence. This layer acts as the individual practitioner's internalized moral and technical capacity, the raw capability required to hold the position. Above that sits the middle layer, professional conduct and objectivity. This is the applied, external-facing execution of a professional's day-to-day duties, where internal competence meets external reality. Finally, we reach the peak of the pyramid, public trust and accountability. This gold peak represents the ultimate objective of all public sector financial work. Everything below it serves this single point. Every micro-level financial decision must trace upward through this specific structural hierarchy to validate the final objective of maintaining public trust. To see how this architecture functions under duress, must stress test it. Consider a scenario where you are reviewing competing contract bids. A senior politician explicitly pressures you to approve a contract for a business associate. The mandated contract is mathematically inferior, while a competing, unassociated bidder offers better value for the taxpayer's money. The pressure is highly personalized. Refusing the politician introduces risk to your career trajectory and job security. Capitulating to this scenario represents a direct attack on the objectivity layer of the ethical framework. Bending to this pressure guarantees the collapse of your fiduciary duty and the failure of the entire structure. Resolving this threat requires shifting away from subjective fear and utilizing a rigid algorithmic logic gate. This requires a specific operational heuristic designed to neutralize this exact threat, the 5-step ethical check. We process the pressure through the first gate. Is the action strictly legal? We process gate 2. Is the process transparent to outside stakeholders? At the third gate, is the selection fair and justifiable by the data? Gate 4 is the front page test. Would you be comfortable seeing this decision exposed in public media? And the final gate, does executing this action protect public trust? In this scenario, the request fails the check. When an action failed act media, and the final gate, does executing this action protect public trust? In this scenario, the request fails the check. When an action fails the operational check, the mandated response protocol is clear, a hard, unequivocal refusal. Following that refusal, you are required to generate a verifiable audit trail, precisely documenting the parameters of the request. Escalating the incident to a defined oversight authority is not merely an option, it is a structural requirement built directly into the CIPFA framework. The CIPFA Code is not a passive list of suggestions, it operates as an active structural defense mechanism for public funds. Maintaining absolute objectivity and integrity are requirements to handle public resources. A functioning public institution relies entirely on the invisible strength of this ethical architecture. The text dictates a reality about the nature of the system and its relative fragility. Public trust is methodically constructed over years of rigorous compliance, yet a single compromised choice can dissolve that credibility, leaving a deficit that takes decades to repair. When the financial guardrails break down in a city government or a national health service, the damage extends far beyond a balance sheet. A single compromised contract can halt transit expansion or stall hospital construction. Because public money represents the infrastructure of daily life, ethical failure in this domain directly hurts entire populations. In private sector finance, the primary objective is straightforward: optimize capital to drive corporate growth and deliver maximum profit to shareholders. This diagram illustrates how public finance operates with an entirely opposite mandate. Here, capital flows outward to fund public services, making citizens stakeholders. Because you manage mandatory tax revenue, the system requires heavy guardrails to ensure money reaches its destination. Standard corporate ethical models optimize for profit. Applying that architecture to public money collapses the system, stripping resources away from the citizens you are mandated to serve. Managing this specific risk requires a framework that bridges technical accounting with the unique transparency requirements of the civil service. The CIPFA Code of Ethics fills this gap for professionals handling public funds. This code functions as an operational algorithm designed to maintain systemic integrity through every transaction. It is built specifically to manage the daily friction between political demands and objective mathematical reality. A rigid framework is required here to prevent taxpayer waste and ensure that public services are delivered transparently, without biased or hidden agendas. This text box highlights a critical variable in public finance: optics. You must constantly evaluate how financial decisions appear to the outside observer. The public interest must always come first. In this environment, even the appearance of private gain destroys systemic trust. To understand how this algorithm functions, we examine its structural components. The CIPFA Code relies on 5 foundational principles: integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. Rather than isolated rules, these principles act as interconnected layers of a larger structural model. This visualizes the model as the public finance ethics pyramid. Its foundation rests entirely on personal integrity and competence, the baseline requirement for any practitioner. Integrity means absolute honesty in all professional relationships. Competence requires continuous maintenance of rigorous technical and financial skills. If a finance professional lacks either honesty or the necessary technical skill, the entire operational structure above them becomes unstable. Individual character and technical proficiency form the base layer upon which systemic public finance is built. Moving up, we reach the operational guardrails for daily decision-making, professional conduct, and objectivity. Objectivity requires the active avoidance of bias in your financial reporting. The primary structural threat here is a conflict of interest, where private connections compromise professional judgment. Civil servants operate in highly politicized environments, making the defense of objective data against political narratives exceptionally difficult. If the base and the operational middle hold, we reach the apex of the framework: public trust and accountability. Public trust serves as a mandatory deliverable, the verifiable output of a functioning ethical system. Accountability means that every single action you take must be fully documented and capable of withstanding intense public scrutiny. Every spreadsheet calculation and audit finding in the lower tiers exists solely to serve this singular peak objective. To see how this framework functions under direct stress, we must apply it to a practical scenario. Consider this scenario. A senior politician explicitly pressures you to approve a contract with a company owned by his associate. However, a competing bidder offers significantly better value for taxpayers' money. If you refuse, you risk your job and future promotion. This creates the pressure paradox, a dangerous collision between your obedience to a hierarchical command structure and your overriding fiduciary duty to the public. This chart outlines the CIPFA 5-step ethical check, which we deploy as a diagnostic algorithm to safely navigate this paradox. First, we run the demand through the baseline gates. Is this legal? And is this transparent? Next, we test for bias. Is it fair and objective? Then we apply the crucial visibility metric. Would I be comfortable seeing this decision printed on the front page of a newspaper? Finally, we observe the ultimate system block. Does this action protect public trust? Approving an overpriced contract for a political associate clearly fails. The system yields a mandatory output. You must directly refuse the pressure. The mechanics of this refusal involve creating a clear, time-stamped audit trail, rigorously documenting the request, and escalating the matter to the appropriate oversight authority. Operationalizing your ethics through this exact 5-step checklist removes emotion from the conflict. It is the only verifiable way to safeguard both the taxpayer's money and your own professional standing. Within the realm of public finance, professional objectivity and personal integrity are absolute, non-negotiable requirements. Systemic public trust is a highly fragile architecture. It takes decades of exact, rigorous adherence to build, and only a single ethical bypass to instantly destroy.